Hey everyone, welcome back to Papa's Workshop. Even though it's February, there's an awful lot that can be done in the garden. Now, one of the main things that I want to be able to do here in South Louisiana, and I'm in Zone 9, I want to be able to prepare the soil because I do container gardening and that soil gets depleted over the course of the growing season. So today I'm going to show you exactly what I do to replenish the soil, and please don't throw out that soil, because the soil itself for container gardening is one of the most expensive aspects of the whole entire process. So you can recycle it, refurbish it, and get it where it'll be ready to grow again for the growing season. Now this year also, I'm going to be adding the hydroponics and do quite a bit of indoor gardening. So I hope that you'll subscribe to the channel and be able to follow along on my hydroponic journey on growing vegetables indoors. Now last summer was pretty brutal. We had some very high temperatures that really took a toll on the gardening. But here's one of my beds that I have with the strawberries and some parsley. And this is the typical gardening that I use with the strawberries, and you can see how the soil has settled down 3 to 4 inches deep into the buckets, and that actually is normal. As the nutrients are used, the soil will get depleted and sink down. These green onions are actually a couple of years old. I cut the tops off. In fact, the tops were cut off about 2 weeks ago, and they've already grown back. Now at the end of the growing season, I always take out the old plants, and you can see how that soil has dropped down 3 to 4 inches, and you can see on the fertilizer setting that the soil is really just depleted. There's just not enough nutrients there. So it's time to be able to add the nutrients back into this soil and get it ready for the growing season. There's a number of different products that I use, and I'm not so concerned about the name brand. I'm just concerned about the products themselves. The potting soil mix actually adds a lot of the nutrients that you need, as well as the manure with the compost. I will add that in too. In addition to that, I'm going to add some perlite, which will help keep the soil where it will retain the moisture, and that's always a good thing to be able to do. But then it doesn't stop here. There's other ingredients that I want to be able to add. One of the most important things you want to be able to include is the earthworm casting, because that will add a lot of the nutrients. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to have earthworms in your different container garden, even better. And I do have some that have survived this last summer heat. The next thing I want to add is a good even base fertilizer. Now this is 1088, and this also has iron in it, and that's very important. You don't want to forget the iron. So you need to look at the ingredients on the back of the package and take a look and make sure that it has iron. If it does not, then you need to buy the iron separately and add that back into your soil as well. Over the winter time, you'll get leaves that will get on top of the soil. And typically what I will do is just dig down, mulch those into the soil, because those will decompose and they'll add nutrients as well to the soil. So it's not just a matter of just scraping them off and throwing them away. Utilize the nutrients that you have in the leaves that have fallen on the bed. So the first step is I really want to dig down deep, mix in all of these leaves, and you'll actually notice that some of them already are decaying, and that is turning into a good level of compost. Once that's done, you can take potting soil, if you have it on hand, and add into your container. Sometimes I'll take dirt from another container and add it in. But in this case, I have some potting soil mix that is left over. So I'm going to go ahead and dump all of that in, and I'm definitely going to have to get another bag and add in some more, because I want to be able to have the topsoil on this potting soil mix do the bulk of the work, raising the level of this bed back to the normal height. And that would be about 1 to 3 inches below the surface. Works real well. Now I had finished up the one bag of the potting mix, and I grabbed another one. Now this particular one happens to be the Miracle Grow, and I'm going to use this to finish filling the container. Now to be able to use 2 different brands of the potting soil mix, to me it's not a big deal. I think you can do that and not have any issue. What you're really looking for is the nutrients that are in the potting mix that you have. And again, you can use topsoil to get it close to the top of your container. That too is certainly fine. And then add just a little bit of the potting mix on top of it. Either way will work just fine. I think people get really too hung up on trying to stay with particular name brands or different products. For the most part, all of them will work quite well. If you have the right fertilizer mix into your soil, you're going to be successful growing the different vegetables over the course of the season. Now for this bed, I'm going to add the rest of the compost with the cow manure mixture. And there's not that much left in this bag. I think I'm just going to go ahead and dump all of that into here. And we'll mix that in good. And then I'm going to grab the bag of the perlite and I'm going to mix that in, pour that in on top. And this is about, I'd say roughly a cup, maybe a cup and a half of the perlite. And then I'm going to grab the earthworm casting and pour that in. And again, it's about the same thing. It's going to be about a cup, cup and a half of the earthworm casting. And I'm going to mix this up real good, get it mixed into the soil nice and deep. And then I'm going to grab the fertilizer and add that. Depending on the soil condition, will help to determine just how much fertilizer that you need. Typically, I do not need much. Really about 3 tablespoons, maybe a third of a cup is plenty. And in this particular bed, I don't even need that much. Now again, this is a slow release fertilizer. And it does have the magnesium in it, which is basically Epsom salts. And again, if your fertilizer doesn't have that, you want to add that. And of course, it has the iron that's in this product. And this is the 1088. And if you have a fertilizer that's 555, that would probably be sufficient. And what do those numbers mean? Well, it's actually the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So those are the 3 numbers that you see on the typical bag of fertilizer. Now, if you look at the soil condition of the smaller pot, you can see it's almost identical to that large container that we were working on. You can also see just how much the soil has settled in these different buckets. But again, the first thing we want to do is be able to really dig and loosen up this soil. I do monitor the soil condition throughout the growing season, and I will add fertilizer roughly about once a month or as needed to be able to make sure that the soil stays at a good level. Now looking at this bucket, you can see how the soil has really compressed down. It's almost to the halfway point on this 5-gallon bucket. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to loosen up this soil. I'm going to mix in these leaves into the soil, and then we're going to do the same step as I did before. You'll notice that little small pot to the left of it, it has quite a bit of clover, and that clover has been growing over the course of the winter, and yes, I do want to remove that. And I want to be able to get all of that clover out of there so that it's not going to be growing and taking the nutrients from the vegetables that I'm growing. That clover can be pretty persistent, and I want to make sure that I get that out of the dirt. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to loosen up this soil, mix it up really good, and stir in some of the dry leaves that will turn into compost. Here's a look at another one of the containers that I have. If you look at the fertilizer content, it actually says ideal. Now it's on the low side, so this just means as I prepare this soil, I'm not going to need as much of the fertilizer. I switched over to the pH analysis and it was showing about a 6. And then I switched back to the fertilizer setting, and it's definitely on the low side. But I think that's an indication of being able to monitor it constantly through the growing season. Although the soil will be depleted and the nutrients will be used, you still have some nutrients in the dirt. And again, that's why the dirt is your most valuable asset and you don't want to throw it away. So again, I'm repeating the same process that I did before. I'm adding in the potting soil mix, the cow manure and the compost, along with the perlite, and then mixing it up really, really good. Of course, the last step is to be able to add in the slow release fertilizer, and for these type of containers, it doesn't take much. Usually about a tablespoonful is all that's necessary. What I typically do is just take some in a little small cup and just sprinkle some right along the surface, and that is sufficient. Once you complete doing the refurbishing of the soil itself and you have it all mixed together, it's time to grab your water hose and let's just water this in. You want to have a good soaking to be able to activate that fertilizer and be able to have it start working its magic. I'm going to let this soil soak in now for the next couple 3 hours. Then I'm going to come back and take some readings again to see what the fertilizer content looks like after refurbishing the soil. So after a couple hours later, you can see the fertilizer content now is basically right in the center, which is the ideal setting, and that's what I'm looking for. So you can see that the fertilizer level's up, the soil is now ready, but I like to be able to wait until the last freeze is completely gone by before I actually start planting. And this will help the soil to stabilize and be ready to receive those new plants. After you finish your work for the day, you want to clean up all of your tools. Now in this case I'm using alcohol. You can also use a bleach and hydrogen peroxide mixture. Whatever you use, you want to be able to clean them and sanitize them so that you don't have any contaminants that's being transferred from one plant to the next. So this is an important step that you don't want to skip. Now I know this was a real short video, but it's all about getting ready for spring. Spring is really just around the corner and you need to get the soil ready. I like to be able to have this soil prepared about a month in advance so that it's ready to receive those new seedlings when I plant. So I hope that this was a beneficial video for you. Get out there in the garden, start getting that soil ready. Remember, don't throw away the soil from last year. It's too big of an expense and it's easy to be able to refurbish. So I hope that you liked this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you real soon in the next video. So for now, bye-bye.